Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm, and this is the second video in this series. In this video, we're going to start writing some of our code. Most of the stuff we do in this first video is going to be pretty much the same as what we've already done before as far as player movement. If you notice, I have these 5 scripts down here. These scripts are all empty. I've taken all of my code out of these scripts. I'm going to keep the scripts in the project for you so that you don't have to worry about creating new scripts and figuring out where to attach them, because the attachments can get a bit complicated. But we'll cover all that stuff here too. For example, if we go into let's go to the red orb here. We have the script attached to it. We'd want to make sure we had that collect script attached to all of these, right? And so I just left the scripts in there so that we can just write directly from them. I'm going to open up my player script here, and let's start talking about what's going to go in here. So with the player, we obviously want to make sure that the player can move. That is the big part here. That's the big thing. So let's see. The first thing I want to do, public float, and we'll call this move speed, right? We want a public movement variable, and we're going to call that, well, we'll set that to 15. We can change that as we go. Then we want to do that cool range trick that we talked about. Range and from 0 to 1. Oh, 0, comma 1. And this is going to be public float. Oh no, that's got to be outside of the brackets. Sorry about that. Public float sliding. It's going to be equal to 0.9f. And public float jump force. We'll set that equal to 1200. And that's pretty much it for right now. Okay, now we need to start creating some methods here. The first thing I want is I'm going to create a fixed update method. Void fixed update. Now, if you don't know what fixed update is, we talked about this in my first video on this topic on 2D player movement. Fixed update is going to update at a specific interval within the code. Instead of updating once per frame, which is what update does, fixed update updates at a specific time. Actually, let's try this with update. This might actually fix that issue we were having with the jumping being sticky. I'm going to try it with update just to see what happens. Okay, and then we start writing our movement code, which I'm not going to explain everything I'm writing because I've already done it in a previous video. And most of this is the same as what we've already done before. Horizontal. Vector 2. We'll call this V, and this is going to be get component rigid body 2D and velocity. Perfect. All right. If h does not equal 0, meaning if we are doing something, then I want to get component rigid body 2D. Oh, dot velocity. I'm going to set that to new vector 2 h times move speed. So that's h. The v is going to stay consistent. No, v dot y, that's what it is. V dot y, that's right. Sorry, I had a little bit of a brain fart there. And then, let's see, else we are going to get component rigid body, not a capital B, body 2D, and velocity. I've been programming for Unity, or in Unity, for about 10 years now, and I still make little small spelling mistakes, like trying to put a capital B in body. So if you do the same, if you make these small mistakes and you're getting mad at yourself for consistently making the same mistakes, don't, because, you know, I've been doing it a lot longer than you have, probably, and I still make stupid mistakes all the time. And sometimes I don't catch them until it's, 2 hours into a debugging session and I can't figure out why anything is working. Okay, so that's my movement there. Let's go ahead and test that out just to make sure that's working. Let's save and let's hit play. And this probably isn't going to want to do much for us right now just because there's so many complicated relationships in this game that I've just gotten rid of. But we should still be able to move back and forth, back and forth. Now, you might be wondering, why can I not go back past that area? Well, the reason is because I simply just created, hello, oh, it's doing something. I created a thing called bounds. This is the left bounds, meaning it's literally just a box collider there that you can't go past. Very simple solution. Okay, so we have movement back and forth. Notice there was no animation there. Let's talk about animation really quickly because this is going to be pretty easy to do. I'm going to write a couple lines of code here, and I want you to think about what it is that I'm writing and see if you can figure out how this is going to work. Get component animator, and we are going to set a bool. The bool we're going to set is running. Almost like I was typing is Russian. True. All right, is running is going to be set to true. Down here, it's going to be is running set to false. Okay, so it's really easy to understand what's going on here. Basically what we're doing is we're getting a component that's attached to our player object, and this component is the animator. Let's take a look at our player. And we have this component called animator. Now this animator is controlled by this controller called player. Let's go to our animations folder here, and we'll find our player controller. Let's open that up. Okay, so this very confusing looking menu is actually not as confusing as it seems. Basically, all this is saying is that when we start our animation, this character, this object that this animation is tied to, is going to start in this idle state. This idle state is just simply standing there. That's the way I've set up that animation. But then if we want to run, then we'll call this run animation, right? And if we want to jump, we'll call this jump animation. And the way we handle whether or not we're running or jumping is by these two Booleans here. These are called parameters, and these are Boolean parameters. We have one called isJumping and one called isRunning. And in our code, literally all we're doing is we're just saying, hey, when we're running, I want to set isRunning to true. That way that running animation starts playing. And when we stop running, right here, I want to set isRunning to false so that we go from running back to idle. Okay, let's test that out and see if that actually worked. I didn't save my code. Always remember to save your code. So I'm going to save there, and we'll go back and let it buffer and hit play again. So notice that when I'm running, I get this cool running animation. Now I could have something in my code that flips my sprite if I'm running backward, but I'm not that worried about it right now. It's fine to have her moonwalking here because we're mainly going forward anyway. So I'm just going to leave that alone. Okay, perfect. So now we have moving. Let's actually get into some jumping. So first, before we create our jumping code, we need to remember, if you remember, we need to create that isGrounded method. So I'm going to go outside of the update, and I'm actually just going to copy my isGrounded method from my notes here and just pop it straight in because it's literally the same thing as what we've written in a previous video. It's pretty easy. So bool isGrounded, yeah, all that stuff's there. So now in here, all I have to do is check to see. I'm going to create a bool called grounded, and I'm going to call that isGrounded method. All right. So now we're checking to see if we're grounded or not. Now here I want to actually set up my jump. So if input dot get Do I want get key down? No, I want this to be based on my Super Nintendo controls. If you have it set up for get key down, key code dot space, then that's going to make it so that your space key, the space bar on your keyboard, sets up is your jump button. I'm going to make mine not get key down, but get button down, and it's going to be jump. And I need to set that here. So basically all I'm saying is, hey, I want to tie this to my jump button in my and you could do the same thing too. Honestly, you can set it to get button down and set it to jump. All that means is that over here in my edit project settings, in my inputs, I have this axis called jump, and I'm just treating it like a button. And this is set to the joystick button 2. Is it button 2 or button 3? Jump 1 is on button 3. So this is set to joystick button 2, which means I will jump if I hit the button 2 on my Super Nintendo controller, which for me is the B button. Okay, so that is all set up, and then I want to get component rigid body 2D, and I'm going to add force, and it's going to be vector 2 dot up times jump force. Oh, semicolon goes there. Now, because we have our animator and we've already done some of this stuff before, we can actually just do it here for our jumping. So I'll paste that in there, and instead of is running, I'll do is jumping, and I'll set that to true because we are jumping. And then let's see, I want to turn off that jump animation. So down here, I'm going to create an else, and I'm going to put in this code here, set that to is jumping, jumping, there we go, and then keep it at false. Okay, so that's a lot. Let's save that and see if we can move our character around and jump. Okay, so jumping works, movement works, everything's good. All right, now our camera's not following our player, but that's okay. And we still have some of these glitches here, which again, we could solve. I could actually solve that glitch for at least that wall by adding a physics material to it and turning off the friction, so you'll slide right off. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. Okay, so we have movement. I think this is a good point this is a good place to stop. And in the next video, we will talk about the camera controller, because there's a different version of the camera controller script I want you to use for this project, because it gives us more control over the camera. If you remember, the last one just kind of your character stayed centered in the middle, and it kind of floated around and found you as you moved around, and that was cool, but it doesn't really work for this project. So I have a new camera controller script that I want to teach you, and we will do that in the next video. So I am going to cut this one a bit shorter. Oof, it's almost 15 minutes, so maybe it's not as short as I thought, but I'm going to cut this one here, and I will see you in episode 3.